happened in front of everyone. Right in the middle of laughter, drinks, and the kind of fake smiles you get at corporate parties where nobody really wants to be themselves. We were at her boss's place in Austin, backyard barbecue, but upscale. Picture this. A modern house with angular glass, white stone siding, and a pool so clear it didn't look real. Someone was playing an acoustic guitar. There were fairy lights in the trees. People were drinking rose out of tumblers and talking about quarterly growth like it was a football game. It was exactly the kind of event Amber thrived in. Amber, my wife of 4 years, was magnetic that night. She wore a navy blue wrap dress, the kind with one simple tied knot at the waist and a neckline that made people look twice. Her hair was pulled half up, curls cascading in waves that had clearly taken effort, but she made it look effortless. I still remember how the scent of her perfume, something floral and expensive, drifted off her skin when she leaned in close. She touched my chest, straightened my collar, smiled like she owned the room and wanted to show people that I was hers. She kissed my cheek 3 times over the course of that night. Once when we arrived, once when she introduced me to her team, and once when I made her laugh with a bad joke. I noticed the glances from her coworkers, curious, a little too observant. Amber was playing a part and I was part of the costume. Not that I minded. Not then. I liked being with her. I liked the way she anchored herself to me in public, the way she wrapped an arm around my waist while she sipped her drink, like she was reminding the world that we were a unit. But then came the moment that shifted everything. We were standing by the grill, chatting with her boss, some guy named Mason with a Patagonia vest and a voice like he'd practiced authority in the mirror. Amber reached up to adjust my collar again. An excuse to touch me, maybe, or maybe just habit. As she did, her tote bag slipped off her shoulder and hit the ground with a soft thud. Her phone slid out and landed screen up on the stone patio. I reached down to grab it before anyone stepped on it. I wasn't trying to snoop. It wasn't a setup. I wish it had been. I really wish it had. Because the screen lit up as I picked it up. No password. Just a notification, front and center. Hope you don't run off right after next time, Redheart. I stared at it for maybe 2 seconds. Long enough for the words to burn themselves into memory. I felt my heartbeat shift from something calm to something unnatural. Like a misfire in an engine. Amber noticed. Her eyes met mine, then flicked down to the phone. In a single smooth motion, she took it from my hand, locked the screen, and smiled. "Oh," she said lightly, like a girl catching her sleeve on a doorknob. "That's just Connor. He's been teasing me about this dumb team in joke all week. You know how people get when they're forced to bond over Zoom." Her tone was perfect, disarming, charming. Even Mason laughed, and someone behind us made a joke about office pranks. I smiled too. The kind of smile that doesn't touch your eyes, doesn't lift your face. The kind that says, "Got it," playing along. She slipped the phone back into her bag, looped her arm through mine, and continued talking to Mason like nothing had happened. She didn't glance at me again for a long time, and I just stood there, holding my drink, smiling like a mannequin. But something inside me had already started to fracture. See, it wasn't the message itself that cut the deepest. It was her reaction. Not the words on the screen, but the way she handled it. There was no stammer, no panic, no guilty flinch. Just a smile, a shrug, and a perfectly delivered excuse. I'd known Amber long enough to catch the micro moments, the gap between thought and instinct. And there hadn't been one. No lag, just control. Composure. That's what scared me. Because you don't build that kind of response on the spot. You build it from experience, from practice. I went through the rest of the evening like a ghost. Shaking hands, laughing at jokes I didn't hear, eating barbecue that tasted like cardboard. I watched Amber through a different lens. One that filtered out the glow and showed me something else entirely. Her gestures looked curated. Her touches rehearsed. Even the way she looked at me started to feel heavy, loaded, like she was checking a box. She'd always been good with people, a natural extrovert. But now I wondered, how much of that was real? How much of it was theater? The man named Connor, I didn't know him. I tried to remember if she'd ever mentioned him. She talked about work often, but names always blurred together. Tech companies have a way of making every department sound like it does everything and nothing at the same time. Growth, strategy, experience, human optimization. It was all buzzwords, and I tuned most of it out over time. But now I remembered the name, Connor. That message wasn't friendly. It was loaded. Flirty, yes, but it was the next time part that drilled into me. That and the heart emoji. It wasn't the kind of thing you text someone from your team after a meeting. Not unless there's something behind it. Something physical. Something emotional. Something that's supposed to stay off the record. Amber didn't bring it up again. On the drive home, she talked about Mason's wife and how she didn't really like her. She laughed at the playlist I'd made for the ride. She leaned her head on my shoulder at a red light and said, "Thanks for coming tonight. I know it's not your thing." And I said, "Of course. Always." But I didn't mean it. Not fully. I was running scripts in my head. Replaying the text. Replaying her face. Replaying the way she took the phone back without missing a beat. When we got home, she kicked off her shoes and went straight to the bathroom to wash off her makeup. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the wine glasses on the drying rack. One had lipstick on it. Not the same color she wore tonight. Maybe from earlier in the week. Or maybe from someone else. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I didn't storm in. I didn't ask who Connor was. I didn't accuse her of anything. I just let the silence settle in like dust. Because sometimes, silence says more than confrontation ever could. Sometimes silence is the only way to listen to the parts of yourself that have been whispering truths you don't want to hear. And for the first time, I listened. After that night, everything started to look different. Even the parts of our life I thought were solid. I didn't say anything about the message. I didn't bring up Connor or the heart emoji. I just carried it silently, let it rot in my chest. And the more I stayed quiet, the louder the small things became. That's when the pattern began, not with confrontation, but with observation. I started rewinding moments, replaying things in my head that once felt harmless. And it didn't take long before a picture started forming. Something foggy at first, like a puzzle made of static, but I could tell there was a shape behind it. Like her new swimming phase. Amber had suddenly gotten very into evening swims. That's how she phrased it. She claimed it helped her decompress. That she needed the laps to turn off the mental tabs. She signed up for a gym in the city, some boutique wellness place that had eucalyptus towels and quiet rooms. At first, I didn't question it. Amber had always gone through phases. She did pottery for 3 weeks, bought a full set of brushes for watercolor painting that she used exactly twice. I figured this was the same, a self-care thing, maybe a social phase with coworkers. But then came the details, or the lack of them. Her hair? Dry when she got home. Towel? Still perfectly folded in the gym bag. One time, I peeked into her bag and found the swimsuit still rolled up, dry as paper. She always looked fresh when she got home. Makeup redone. Her sneakers brand new. Months into the routine, they looked like they'd never touched concrete. I asked once, offhand, "How was the pool?" She blinked for half a second too long. "Great. Super relaxing. Only like 3 people there, so I had the lane to myself." I smiled. "Nice." But a voice inside me whispered, "Liar." She'd stopped putting anything on our shared calendar too. We used to sync everything. Dinners, errands, events, even dumb stuff like pick up dry cleaning or groceries by 4. But lately, she said she preferred going back to paper planning. A leather-bound day planner had taken up permanent residence on her desk, always closed. If I asked what her night looked like, she'd say vague things like project stuff or meeting someone from the strategy team. No names, no details. Then came the smells. The first time I noticed it, I was folding laundry. Her clothes smelled unfamiliar, not bad, just different. A new perfume, maybe, one I hadn't bought her. It wasn't the gym kind of scent either. Not that powdery floral or the crisp clean from soap. It was richer, warmer, something layered and expensive. Something a woman wears when she wants to be remembered. Clung to her jackets. sometimes the collar of her blouse. Once, I caught a trace of it on the throw blanket in our den, the one she used when she worked late on her laptop. I didn't say anything. I just noted it, and after a while I started logging things. Dates, smells, patterns, little things I could track, because my memory alone didn't feel reliable anymore. I needed proof, not just for myself, but because I started second-guessing reality. I started taking photos of receipts she left in her coat pocket. I opened the Notes app and wrote short blurbs when she came home late. Tuesday, said Jim. Home 10:43 p.m. Hair styled, lipstick fresh, smelled like citrus and musk. I wasn't proud of it, felt paranoid, but I didn't feel like I was being irrational. I felt like I was waking up. One night, I came home early from work. Project wrapped ahead of schedule, and I thought I'd surprise her. I didn't text, just drove home with a bottle of wine and Thai takeout. The house was quiet. Her car was in the driveway. I figured maybe she was upstairs. But as I stepped inside, I noticed something odd. 2 wine glasses in the sink. One had lipstick on the rim, not her usual shade. I checked the trash. Takeout from a Mediterranean place near her gym. She told me she hated that spot. She came downstairs a few minutes later in sweats, hair damp. "Oh," she said, startled. "You're home early." "Yeah." I smiled, lifting the bag. "Surprise." She smiled back, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Ah, that's sweet. I just ate, though. Wasn't expecting you." I pointed at the sink. "You have a friend over?" She glanced behind me, then back. "Oh, no." I poured a second glass while I was watching a webinar. "Forgot to drink it." I nodded slowly. "Right." She didn't ask about my day. She didn't touch the wine I brought. We sat in front of the TV for an hour, watching something she barely paid attention to. At one point, she said, "You're quiet." "I'm tired," I told her. And that was true, but not in the way she thought. That night, after she went to bed, I stayed up in the den and opened her planner. I don't even know what I expected. But when I flipped to that week, I saw carefully written entries like empty 7 p.m. and stretch 9:30. What the hell was stretch? There were smiley faces next to some notes, hearts next to others. None of it made sense. The handwriting changed on one sticky note. It was clearly not hers. "Bring that playlist again, smiley face," it said. I tucked the note back in and closed the book. My hands were shaking. It was like I'd stepped into someone else's marriage. Like I was living beside a person I knew only as a character. Someone with scenes, dialogue, stage directions. And I realized I wasn't in a marriage anymore. I was in a play. One with rehearsed lines, recurring props, and offstage secrets. The next morning, I woke up before her and sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, looking out the window like I was waiting for the sun to tell me what to do. She came down in a robe, smiled like she always did, and kissed my cheek. "Morning," she said softly. "Morning," I replied. That was it. I didn't bring it up. I didn't ask about the lipstick glass or the perfume or the different handwriting in her planner, because I wasn't hunting a confession anymore. I was watching, studying, mapping the decline in real time, and what I saw more than anything else was performance. She cooked more suddenly big, elaborate meals, asked about my day with intense focus, wore that expensive perfume at home. It was too much, too polished, like she was trying to compensate for something or distract from the parts she couldn't control. And maybe she thought it was working. But every night I went back to my notes. Every day I watched with colder eyes. I stopped being a husband. I became a witness. The truth didn't scream. It whispered. Subtle. Insidious. But once you heard it, you couldn't unhear it. I told myself I was waiting. That I needed something undeniable. Not just shadows and lipstick stains. But the thing is, truth doesn't come gently. It waits until you're surrounded. Until every lie collapses at once and you're left in the center of it, blinking under fluorescent lights, wondering how you didn't see it sooner. The moment it all shattered, it was almost poetic, like the universe had a flair for dramatic irony. Amber invited me to one of her company's formal events. Some kind of product launch or end-of-quarter celebration. Downtown venue, cocktails, dress code that used words like elevated cocktail. She said it'd be good for us. We should show people we're solid, she said. Those were her exact words. I remember standing in front of the mirror that night, tightening my tie, wondering who we were putting on a show for. Her coworkers? Her boss? Me? She came downstairs looking like a magazine spread. Black dress, gold earrings, sleek hair. She smiled like nothing was wrong, like we hadn't been living in a polite vacuum for the last month. You clean up nice, she said, smoothing my lapel. So do you. We drove in silence, music low, city lights washing over us in streaks. She reached for my hand at a red light. I let her hold it. It felt like holding something delicate that didn't belong to me anymore. The venue was upscale. Big windows, waiters in black. I recognized a few of her coworkers from earlier events. Connor was there. I only knew it was him because I'd studied LinkedIn. I'd looked at every face she worked with, watched company videos, zoomed in on group photos. The guy with the smirk and the navy suit. Yeah, that was him. We shook hands. He grinned like we were old friends. I didn't squeeze too hard, just enough to let him know I wasn't blind anymore. Amber stayed close to me for the first half of the night. She touched my arm, laughed too easily, told people how I was the rock that kept her grounded. It was all so polished. I wanted to scream. She introduced me to people I'd heard about in fragments. Kelsey from creative, Liam from product. Like she was performing a script we both knew had holes in it. We were halfway through the evening when it happened. We had drifted off to the snack table. Just the two of us, near the back of the room. She leaned against me, laughing about some charcuterie joke I don't even remember. Her hand was on my chest. Her perfume was thick. She was performing int asterisk Macy. Maybe even for herself. Then her phone buzzed on the table. Screen up. I wasn't even looking for it. But it was right there. Front and center. Are you with him now? Then I'll just say, it was the best night of my life. My body didn't flinch, but my stomach sank. The name? Connor. No initials this time. Just Connor. Amber followed my gaze. Her laugh died instantly. For a moment, everything froze. She stared at the screen like it was a detonator. Then, slow as anything, she picked up the phone, turned it over face down, and looked at me. No panic, no guilt, just this low, dead-eyed stare. Then she said the words that stuck to my ribs like a splinter. Don't make a scene. That was it. No explanation. No apology. Not even a denial. Just damage control. I didn't say a word. Didn't yell. Didn't grab the phone or throw my glass. I looked at her, really looked, and saw it all. Her posture, the tightness in her jaw, the flicker of embarrassment. Not because of what she'd done, but because it had been exposed. She dropped her gaze. And in that moment, everything I'd been trying not to believe became fact. The message weeks ago? Not a joke. The swims? Not swims. The extra glass, the planner, the perfume, the laughter that never reached her eyes. It was all a breadcrumb trail to a truth she never intended to say out loud. And now she didn't have to. The room didn't feel real after that. People mingled, music played, wine glasses clinked. But for me, it all became background noise. Like I'd been pulled out of the main script and shoved into some side story no one wanted to talk about. I stayed quiet the rest of the night. She didn't leave my side again. Clung to me like a handbag. Introduced me to more people. Told jokes with perfect timing. But her voice was just that, noise. Connor kept his distance after that. Maybe he knew. Maybe she told him. Maybe he just saw the look in my eyes and decided not to test it. In the car on the way home, we didn't speak. She didn't reach for my hand this time. I watched the city roll past the windshield. Every streetlight felt like it was exposing something. She went straight to the bedroom when we got home. Didn't ask if I wanted tea. Didn't ask anything. I stood in the kitchen, alone in the dark, just staring at the marble countertop we'd picked out together during better days. And I realized something I hadn't been ready to admit before. This wasn't just betrayal. It was indifference. She didn't care that I saw the message. She didn't fight to fix it. Didn't scramble for an excuse. She just wanted to keep things tidy. Smooth. Controlled. Because for her, this had already happened. The damage wasn't new. It was just now out in the open. She was living a double life. I was the husband in the frame, the image that made her look whole. But her real life, the one with passion, spontaneity, recklessness, that wasn't with me. That was behind locked phones and smiley emojis, in hotel rooms and fake gym nights. And now that I saw it for what it was, I couldn't unsee it. That night, I sat on the edge of the guest bed, didn't even try to lie beside her, and opened the Notes app where I'd been keeping my records. I added one final line for the day. Thursday, 8:32 p.m. Text from Connor. No denial, no regret, just don't make a scene. And beneath it, I wrote something I didn't fully understand until the words were typed. She's already gone. The next morning, she made breakfast. Like nothing had happened. Like the night before hadn't peeled the skin off our marriage and left it exposed under stage lights. I woke up to the smell of coffee and toasted bread. She was in the kitchen, humming some soft indie song she used to love. There were avocados on the counter, eggs in the pan, 2 mugs filled and steaming. It looked like a commercial for a happy couple's morning. Domestic. Serene. She turned when she heard my footsteps. "Hey, sleepyhead," she said, smiling. "Hungry." I stood in the doorway watching her. No apology. No explanation. Not even a question about the look on my face. She was performing normalcy, one dish at a time. I nodded and sat down. She plated the food like always, neat, organized, deliberate. She drizzled the toast with chili oil, sprinkled sea salt on the eggs. It was the exact way I liked it, and somehow that made it worse. She slid my plate in front of me and sat across the table, crossing her legs, sipping her coffee with both hands. "Big day today," she said. 3 back-to-back meetings. I chewed slowly, watching her over the rim of my mug. "Hope it goes well," I replied, voice flat. She nodded. "Thanks, babe." No mention of the message. No sign that anything was broken. No trace of the man whose text burned through both our retinas just 12 hours earlier. The name Connor might as well have never existed. That was the moment I knew we weren't married anymore. Not in the way that counts. We were co-leads in a long-running play called Everything is Fine. The audience? Whoever might be watching. Her co-workers. Friends. Parents. Me. Every smile, every word carefully chosen. A script. But I didn't have lines anymore. I'd gone off book. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table for an hour, just listening to the silence she left behind. My untouched toast stared back at me. The eggs had gone cold. Her perfume lingered in the air, sweet and suffocating. She hadn't apologized. She hadn't even tried to lie again. She just pivoted. Shifted into the role of the perfect wife like that would fix it. As if kindness and routine could rewind time and erase the truth I'd already swallowed. I didn't confront her that night, or the night after. I wanted to see how long she'd keep the act going. The answer? Forever, probably. Because every morning after that one was a repeat. Toast. Coffee. Music playing from the speaker in the corner. She kissed my cheek, laughed at my jokes, touched my shoulder when she passed. And every movement was haunted by the question she refused to let exist. Why? Why the messages? Why the hiding? Why him? But she didn't ask because asking would make it real. So she just doubled down on the image. She started dressing better at home. Bought new lingerie. Lit candles in the bedroom. She texted me more during the day. "Thinking of you? How's work going? Miss you." She brought up old memories over dinner, like greatest hits from a band that knew they were past their prime. "Remember our trip to Portland?" she'd say, eyes sparkling. "Yeah," I'd reply. "I remember. I always remembered. I remembered everything. Which is why this all hurt the way it did." She even started suggesting plans again. Weekend trips. A new couple's brunch place. Hiking. I'd nod, agree, make noises of approval. But inside, I wasn't there. I was behind the glass, watching her speak, wondering how long she'd been rehearsing these lines. Every word she said was part of the cover-up. And maybe she thought it was working. But what she didn't know was that I'd stopped being her audience. I was the critic now. I wasn't interested in the plot anymore. I was interested in the cracks in the performance. Like how she always locked her phone now, even to check the weather. Or how she started using earbuds during calls instead of putting people on speaker like she used to. Or how, when I asked what she did that day, she always had just enough detail, never too much, never too little. I started testing her. One night, I asked about a fake coworker I made up. Said, "Did Marcy from finance get the numbers in on time?" She paused. "Oh yeah, I think so. She mentioned something about it in Slack." Marcy didn't exist. She didn't even flinch. Another night, I casually mentioned how Connor had posted something funny on LinkedIn. Watched her closely. "Oh yeah," she said. "What was it?" There was no spike in her heart rate. No twitch of the mouth. Just calm, careful curiosity. It scared me, because I realized this wasn't guilt anymore. This was training. She was trained to navigate lies. And I trained myself to recognize the exact moment the truth disappears from a relationship. It's not when they lie. It's when they lie well. I started withdrawing piece by piece. I stopped touching her first. Stopped asking about her day. Stopped checking in. I went through the motions. I still smiled, still thanked her for dinner, still took out the trash. But inside, I was packing my bags emotionally. One connection at a time. She noticed. She leaned in harder. "Are you okay?" she asked one night as we lay in bed, backs almost touching. "Yeah," I said, eyes on the ceiling. "Just tired." She rolled over, put her arm across my chest. "You've been quiet." "Sorry. Long week." She kissed my shoulder. I didn't move. "I love you," she said after a long pause. I didn't reply. She waited a moment, then rolled back to her side. The next morning, she made French toast. Extra effort. I ate it in silence. The thing about betrayal is, once you know it happened, every second that passes without honesty becomes its own form of abuse. It's not just what they did. It's what they're willing to pretend didn't happen. That kind of pretending, it erodes something in you, and she was still pretending. That we were fine. That we were healing. That no one else had ever touched her in a way I wasn't supposed to see. I wasn't healing. I wasn't even hurting anymore. I was observing, taking notes, watching her script spiral into its final act. She thought kindness could cover it. She didn't realize that love without truth is just noise. And I was already deaf to it. I didn't say I was leaving. I didn't even let myself think it in full sentences. But from the moment I saw that second message, it was the best night of my life. The countdown began. Amber had no idea. She moved through our home like someone who still thought the set was intact, the cameras rolling. But the crew had already packed up. The lights were off. The illusion was dying. So I started planning. Quietly, methodically, not like someone plotting revenge, but like someone preparing for a controlled demolition. If a building is falling apart, you don't scream at the bricks. You study the structure, set the charges, and walk away before it collapses. I became a collector of proof. Not because I wanted to confront her, but because I knew I'd need to be ready when it was time to walk. I took **TS of her notifications. The ones she thought I didn't notice. Brief flashes of texts when she forgot to lock her screen or left it face up. Sometimes from Connor. Sometimes just emojis. Once, a single message that said, "Still thinking about Tuesday. You smelled like vanilla." I photographed receipts she left out. Bars, coffee shops, boutique wine stores she never mentioned in conversation. I cross-referenced her calendar entries when I could. I even started using our home printer to scan things like gym check-ins and meal delivery confirmations. Her routines had holes. Her stories didn't track. And slowly, the folder grew. She still smiled every day. Still made breakfast. Still leaned her head on my shoulder while we watched reruns of shows we used to love. It was uncanny. Like someone playing a character she hadn't rehearsed in years but was now trying to rein habit. And I played along. Not because I wanted to save us, but because I didn't want her to see me packing from the inside out. I contacted a lawyer. Took me a week to pick one. I met with 3 scheduled on days she thought I was working late. I even changed clothes in the car to hide my suit, wore hoodies over button-downs, kept cologne in the glove box so I didn't smell like office air conditioning. The lawyer I chose was calm, direct, a woman in her 50s who wore glasses low on her nose and didn't ask about love. She asked about assets, about proof, about who would keep the house and whether I expected a fight. When I handed her the folder, she didn't flinch. "You're ready," she said, flipping through the pages. "This is clear. Paper trails solid." I swallowed. I haven't confronted her. She looked up. "You don't need to. Let the evidence speak." Felt like someone else was sitting in that chair, nodding along. Someone version of me who had already moved out and moved on. But I wasn't there yet. I was still sleeping beside her. Still accepting coffee in the mornings. Still responding to "I love you" with a quiet "you too." But the man she was talking to, he was already gone. The lawyer asked when I wanted to file. I said soon. Back home, things were routine, almost aggressively so. Amber had taken to planning things again. She added dinners to our calendar, started baking, bought new candles. The house smelled like cinnamon and vanilla all the time now, like a holiday we weren't celebrating. One night, she surprised me with a picnic on the floor of the living room. Pillows, wine, a charcuterie board. She even put on the playlist we made during our honeymoon. "Thought we could use a reset," she said, eyes soft. I sat across from her, legs crossed, holding a glass I didn't want. "This is nice," I said. And it was if you ignored the part where the person across from me had betrayed everything the playlist used to represent. She asked if I remembered the winery in Oregon. I said I did. She laughed at the time we got lost in the mountains and ended up at a gas station with no cell service. I nodded along, smiling at the memories. But the whole time, all I could think about was whether Connor knew about those stories too. Whether she told him our jokes. Whether she replayed our life with new names. The picnic ended with her leaning against me. Quiet. No kiss. No words. Just her head on my chest, pretending this was something worth salvaging. I didn't push her away, but I didn't hold her either. At night, I lay awake beside her. Not angry, just distant. Like I was floating above the bed, watching strangers play out a final act with no climax. I started keeping my essentials in a separate drawer. Laptop, ID, a change of clothes. If something blew up, I wanted to be able to leave in 10 minutes flat. I backed up files, changed passwords, and made copies of everything that mattered. She never noticed. She was too busy trying to glue the frame back together. Once, I came home and she was watching old videos on our TV vacations, birthdays, candid clips of us dancing in the kitchen. She turned to me, eyes damp. "You looked so happy here," she said, voice low. I didn't blink. I was. That was the closest I came to breaking character. And for a second, something in her broke too. She looked away. The remote slipped from her hand. She didn't say anything else that night. The next day, she made pancakes. Extra syrup, whipped cream, strawberries. I ate half, then went to the garage and loaded the folder into a locked bag. I left it in my trunk, just in case. It's a strange kind of grief, mourning something while it's still alive. Watching the person you built a life with float next to you like a ghost who doesn't know she's dead. She kept trying, playing board games, asking about my coworkers. She wore my college sweatshirt one morning, smiled like it meant something, and maybe deep down she thought it could all still work. But I didn't want polite dinners or scented candles. I didn't want to be reset. I didn't want the version of her that could pretend nothing happened. I wanted the truth. Raw, ugly, honest. And if I couldn't have that, then I didn't want her at all. So I kept preparing. Quietly, carefully. Like a man who knows the bridge behind him is on fire, but doesn't want to turn around and make it real until he's already crossed to the other side. Because I wasn't just ending a marriage. I was ending a performance. And soon the curtain would fall. I didn't yell, didn't accuse. I waited. At her next work event, I handed the folder to HR calm, quiet, final. Amber watched, smile frozen mid-sentence. Minutes later, they pulled her aside. When she returned, she didn't speak. At home, she didn't explain, didn't cry, just set the table like always and walked upstairs. Ate alone. No anger, no sadness, just silence. The kind that meant everything was over. The last few weeks were quiet theater. She played at Reconnection, old movies, candles, memories, but it was too late. One night she asked, "Are you leaving?" I didn't answer. She nodded, tears forming, and whispered, "Okay." No more begging, just the quiet truth between us. After that, we were two people waiting for an ending we both knew had already arrived. And when it finally came, neither of us said goodbye.